Welcome dear students once again to my online class. Today's class is for the first semester students of the FYUGP course, the 4-year undergraduate program. In the first semester English literature core paper, we have what is called the English literary and social history. So let's today deal with the earliest period of English literature, that is the Anglo-Saxon period. Now first let's go to the chronology, that is the time frame of that period called the Anglo-Saxon period. Now we know the beginning of the medieval period is the 5th century. So 5th century, that is 450, to be precise, we can say 450 AD to 1500 is called the medieval period. That means fall of the Roman Empire to the start of the Renaissance. That is what is called the medieval period of English literature. Now that medieval period again is divided into two groups, rather two small periods, up to 1066 and then after 1066. So 450 to 1066 is called the Anglo-Saxon period or Old English period. 1066 to 1500 is called the Middle English period or Anglo-Norman period. Now here we are concerned with the Anglo-Saxon or Old English period. Now that 1066 is the demarcating line when what happens is that Norman conquest takes place, but that's part of another class. Now dealing with the Anglo-Saxon period, we said 450 to 1066 is the Anglo-Saxon period. Now etymology will take us to why do we call it Anglo-Saxon period. Now that name Anglo-Saxon comes from the people, the ruling class, and the Old English comes from the language, the status of the English language. That phase of the language was called the Old English language. So Old English period or Anglo-Saxon period refers to the same period, that is from 450 AD to 1066 AD. Now why Anglo-Saxon? Now you know, in the prehistoric times we have records of people who inhabited this island, which later came to be called England. They were the Celts. Celts are considered to be the earliest inhabitants. Those Celts, the Celtic people, were defeated and conquered by the Romans under Claudius in 43 AD, and from 43 AD to 410 AD Romans were the rulers. Now in 410 the Romans left this island primarily for two reasons. One was there were problems in their own country, so they decolonized this island. Second, at about this time in the 5th century, early middle of the 5th century, there were invasions from outside tribes. These tribes are mainly Germanic tribes or Teutonic tribes, mainly three of those, Angles, Saxons and Jutes. So from Angles, Saxons and Jutes we have the term Anglo-Saxons. So this from 410 the Romans left. This opened the way for the Angles, Saxons and Jutes to come in. So these Angles, Saxons and Jutes were in firm control by 450 AD. So 450 AD is considered to be the beginning of the Anglo-Saxon period or Old English period. Now this from Anglo-Saxons, from Angles came Angleland. From Angleland it became England. So even today the people of England consider themselves as descendants of the Anglo-Saxons. They are the Anglo-Saxons. So Anglo-Saxons, they are the people who ruled over the Celts up to 1066. Mostly in the in the 9th century there were some Scandinavian invasions, and some parts were under the control of the Scandinavians or Danes or Vikings. They were called Danelaws. But predominantly from 450 to 1066 the ruling class was the Anglo-Saxons. So the period is called the Anglo-Saxon period. From the people, the Anglo-Saxon, we have the name Anglo-Saxon is. And from the language, so the English language, actually at the beginning the English language was the language of that developed out of the blending of the three dialects spoken by the Angles, Saxons and Jews. Now that these wandering tribes settled down in one island, there was more and more communication between them, interaction between them. As a result, what happened in due course, the Germanic dialects that they spoke blended or fused into one, which is the Old English language. So from that we have the name Old English period. Now coming to the literature itself, they had their literature that was oral. In 597 St. Augustine comes with the purpose of from Rome. He arrives in England with the purpose of spreading the Christian faith. Now, as a result, in the 7th century, he comes at the end of the 6th century. From the 7th century, we have what is called not only Christianization but also written literature. So the priest started writing in the Old English language. So we can say the start of the Old English literature is 450. From that logic, that the Anglo-Saxons and Jews established their kingdom in 450 AD. We can also say it is 7th century. The beginning is 7th century because in the 7th century, for the first time, we have the written English literature. So both are correct. Then coming to the characteristics of the literature of the Anglo-Saxons. First of all, it was anonymous. We don't know the names of many of the poets and writers. Some of them we know, very few. So predominantly anonymous. Anonymous because to start with, their literature was oral, handed down orally from generation to generation. So anonymous, oral. Then very important, alliteration was used. The repetition of consonant sounds at the beginning of a word. That was the poetic device predominant in the Anglo-Saxon poetry. Then Anglo-Saxon poetry was pagan, non-Christian. Christianization takes place later on, as we saw, after the coming of St. Augustine. So anonymous, alliteration, pagan. Then we also have the martial spirit. Their literature shows the martial spirit. They were martial military tribes. And then love of the sea. They were wandering tribes. So in their literature we see a love of the sea. So, and one of the quality characteristics of the literature is it is anonymous. It uses it is oral to start with. It is alliterative. It is pagan, and there is a love of the sea and a martial spirit. So these are the characteristics. Then coming to the types, the forms and genres prevalent in the Anglo-Saxon literature. Predominantly, the literature can be divided into two groups: prose and poetry. Under prose comes the homilies of Ælfric and Wulfstan. Under poetry, we have both religious poetry and secular poetry. Religious poetry, we have mainly two groups: the Caedmon group and the Synod group. Secular poetry, first mention must be made of that great epic Beowulf. So there was an epic in Anglo-Saxon literature, Beowulf. Then we have elegies. There were no proper lyrics then, but these elegies were lyrical. Elegies like the wife's lament, the husband's message, the wanderer, the seafarer. So we have epics, elegies. Then we have heroic poems like Whitseed and Waldeer. Then war poems also like the fight at Finnsburg, the Battle of Maldon, and the Battle of Brunanburh. So this was, and then of course, as far as prose is concerned, besides Ælfric and Wulfstan's homilies, we have the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, which was inspired and helped by King Alfred in the 9th century. And then we have the ecclesiastical history of the English nation, which is of course written in Latin by Bede. Still, that's an important document. So these are the different types of literature prevalent in the Anglo-Saxon period. So it was an alliterative literature, it was anonymous, it was pagan, it was, as we said, the fighting spirit was there was a love of the sea. So these were the characteristics. As far as type is concerned, poetry and prose, you have Ælfric and Wulfstan's homilies, then the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, then also that Latin document called the by Bede, Ecclesiastical History of the English Nation. Then poetry, very important, epic, we have Beowulf, we have the elegies, wife's lament, husband's message, seafarer and the wanderer. Then we have heroic poems like Whitseed and Waldeer. Then we have war poems, Battle of Brunanburh, fight at Finnsburg, Battle of Maldon. So this is the overall picture of the Anglo-Saxon period, Anglo-Saxon literature. So it was the Anglo-Saxon culture, Teutonic culture, Germanic culture that dominated, and this will be disrupted in 1066 when the Normans will come with their French culture. Till then, it's Anglo-Saxon predominantly, though as I said, in the 9th century there were invasions from the Scandinavians and Danes, and certain parts were under their control. Still, on the whole, it is the Anglo-Saxon period. So that was in a nutshell a bird's eye view, you can say, of the Anglo-Saxon period. I hope this will help you in understanding the beginnings of the English literature. This was the beginning. The beginning was in the medieval period with the fall of the Roman Empire. So that's it. Thank you. Hope to meet you again in another class.